Ciao e benvenuto alla Sociedad Anti-Alighieri de la Ciudad de México. ¿Estás pensando ir a estudiar a Italia? Nosotros te ayudamos a realizar tu sueño. Descubre cómo obtener el nivel requerido para la admisión en las universidades italianas. Estudia y certifícate con nosotros. Tenemos cursos de todos los niveles, desde el más básico hasta el más avanzado. Y además podrás escoger entre una amplia variedad de horarios y entre la modalidad en línea y presencial. Hoy en día, el conocimiento de más de un idioma extranjero es fundamental para ser competitivo en el mercado laboral. Y poder demostrar tu nivel de conocimiento con una certificación puede marcar la diferencia entre tu perfil y el de otro candidato. Ven a conocer el PLIDA, la certificación de idioma italiano reconocida internacionalmente y ante la SEP. Y comprueba tu nivel de italiano para acceder a las universidades de tu interés. Prepárate con la institución de la enseñanza del italiano más antigua en México y obtén las herramientas para construir tu futuro. Italia y la Sociedad Anti-Alighieri te esperan. Arrivederci.
Hola a todos, buen día. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos a esta tercera sesión de Encuentro Creativo. Esta sesión es llevada a cabo con uno de nuestras universidades partners, que es Polimoda. Entonces, bueno, antes de comenzar a dar la introducción del ponente y algunos mensajes de bienvenida, les proyectaremos un video de bienvenida del excelentísimo embajador Luigi De Chiara, el presidente de la Cámara Lorenzo Vianello y la directora Farida Layar.
Soy Luigi De Chiara, embajador de Italia en México. Soy muy feliz de presentar Encuentro Creativo con la presentación de la oferta formativa de esas instituciones académicas en el campo de las industrias creativas italianas. Queremos ofrecer a todos los mexicanos no solo la posibilidad de mejorarse de un punto de vista técnico, sino también de saber dónde van las tendencias, cómo se ha construido el éxito del Made in Italy.
En la Cámara de Comercio Italiana en México estamos honrados de poder promover la oferta académica italiana entre los estudiantes mexicanos. Durante la primera edición, en las 2 semanas del evento, tuvimos más de 2.000 alumnos participantes y logramos un alcance en redes sociales de más de 1 millón de personas. Este proyecto nos brinda la oportunidad de acercar México a Italia, 2 naciones amigas y que tienen muchísimo que ofrecer en materia de creatividad y diseño. Disfruten de todas las actividades que hemos planeado en coordinación con las mejores universidades de diseño que hay en Italia y junto con las marcas que nos apoyan en esta iniciativa.
Bienvenidos a esta segunda edición de Encuentro Creativo, que te permitirá conocer más acerca de la oferta académica que la capital de la moda y el diseño ofrece, Italia. Por favor, síguenos a lo largo de las conferencias de Encuentro Creativo. Muchísimas gracias y bienvenido.
Pues bueno, bienvenidos a todos a una sesión más de Encuentro Creativo. El día de hoy, esta sesión es llevada a cabo con Polymoda. Antes de comenzar, les daremos unos mensajes, sobre todo que recordar que para poder participar en las 2 becas que Polymoda está ofreciendo en esta segunda edición, es necesario que participen al 50% de las actividades. Entonces, nosotros durante toda la sesión estaremos enviando al chat un formulario de registro y esto nos permite justamente pues garantizar de que están participando en las sesiones. La sesión o la liga se manda solamente por sesión, no se pueden mandar por sesiones que ya hayan pasado, entonces igual les agradecemos que se registren a tiempo. Y bueno, sin más por el momento, doy inicio con esta ponencia, la cual es titulada Meeting Consumer Needs by Understanding What the Value, y esto es en colaboración con uno de los profesores de Polimoda. Davide Lettieri es profesor de Retail Management, Customer Behavior, Project Leader for Retail and Omnichannel Fashion Management, que es un máster que tiene Polimoda en colaboración con Gucci. Les contaré un poco más de la experiencia de Davide. Él ha trabajado como comprador y director de tiendas tanto en Berlín como en Montreal, comprador de ropa masculina en la tienda de lujo de Corner de Berlín, trabajó con marcas como Balenciaga, Saint Laurent, Valentino, y más tarde trabajó como freelancer en los showrooms de Ivy Ackerman y Raf Simons en París. En Canadá, su experiencia en venta al por menor se desarrolló en la marca de ropa de mujer Judy & Charles, ya anteriormente en Puma y H&M. En la actualidad imparte clases en Polymoda y dirige los proyectos de los estudiantes en Business of Fashion y en el máster Fashion Retail Management en colaboración con Gucci. Estudió en la Universidad Concordia de Montreal, donde se graduó con honores en comercio y donde también obtuvo un certificado en fundamentos del periodismo. Durante sus años de estudiante, estudió idiomas en Florencia, en Salamanca, y bueno, actualmente está cursando un diploma de posgrado en liderazgo en la Universidad McGill, una de las mejores universidades de Canadá. Entonces, bueno, sin más por el momento, cedo la palabra a Davide. Davide, please, we can already start the session.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Claudia, for the nice introduction. I didn't realize you were going to share the fact that I studied in Salamanca. So I imagine some students now are thinking that I speak Spanish, but unfortunately, I was very young and my Spanish is not at the level it should be at. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon. I'm very excited to share some knowledge with you and to be representing Polymoda for this lecture. As Claudia shared, my professional background is in high-end fashion and in luxury. Mainly working as a buyer and a retail director. And now it's been 7 years that I've been in education, so teaching consumer behavior, retail management at Polymoda. And I'm a lifelong learner, so like many of you. So I really believe in continuous learning, and I'm doing this graduate diploma at McGill, as Claudia mentioned, in leadership. And it's wonderful because I think this is one of the secrets to staying fresh, also staying young, and being able also to connect with my peers, essentially, as you are all students as well. So I'm going to share my screen. For those of you who have not been to Florence or know much about Polymoda, it's one of the most important fashion schools in the world. And Florence has an amazing history with fashion, and still today is one of the leading cities when it comes to design, production, and creativity. After the lecture, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to help out and answer those for you. So I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me as I do this. All right. So I'm going to need, okay, so this should be good. So Claudia, can you just confirm on your end that everything is good as far as the screen sharing?
Yeah, we can already see your presentation.
Fantastic. All right, so I start with this particular slide whenever I have a lecture, a new lecture. Okay, so when I meet a new group of students, whether it's for my consumer behavior class or I'm doing a workshop or a webinar like today, I love starting with this slide, which is a quote of Yohji Yamamoto, where he once said, "Buyers are always looking for something new." But I'll tell you, how this quote came to be, a little bit of fashion history, which I think is so important for all of us to know our fashion history. And the story goes like this, and maybe some of you already know it, you're fans of Yohji Yamamoto. In the 80s, the Japanese designers Yohji Yamamoto and Comme des Garçons went to Paris to show their collections for the first time. Now, in the 80s, oh, I think somebody's microphone went on. So just a reminder to everyone, maybe just double check that your microphones are off. And then when we have questions and so on, you could definitely turn them on. So yeah, it was the 80s and the Japanese designers were going to Paris for the first time. And in the 80s, I mean, you can Google it, you've seen films. It was quite bold. The fashion was loud. The leading designers were Terry Mugler, Claude Montana. And here came the Japanese designers showing collections mainly in black, a lot of distressed clothing, and the critics did not like it. So all the journals, all the reviews were quite negative. Who are these Japanese designers and what are they doing? And this is so not Paris or not fashion. But it was an instant success. So when Business of Fashion interviewed Yohji Yamamoto a few years back, he asked him, what was it, you know, despite the critics disliking it, how come you were so successful? And he said, because buyers are always looking for something new. So this is a seed I like to plant in the minds of those I work with, and to remember the importance of newness. And newness can come in the form of disruption, like Gucci and Balenciaga did a few years ago, or it can come in forms of reinvention, which is quite popular today. So when we're trying to connect with consumers, we have to remember, are we offering them something new? So this, like I said, is a little fashion history and a seed I like to plant in the mind of my students. So let's go here. So as you know, today's lecture is called Meeting Luxury Consumer Needs by Understanding What They Value. Okay. So I think somebody still has their microphone open. No worries, just check that out to make sure it's closed. Some of you may be familiar with the store Browns, especially if you visited London. Here's Holly Rogers. And I like to use excerpts from our peers in the industry, the leaders, because they have so much knowledge they can share. And Holly was once interviewed in Wallpaper magazine because Browns was opening these nomad stores. And I love this statement from her. From the time we first opened our doors in 1970, Browns has showcased pioneering designers. We've blended our love of fashion with incredible experiences, and we've always ensured that we change and evolve with our customers. So some key words here that I want you to pick up on is the idea of change and evolve with our customers. Okay, this is really, really important. Consumers are humans. In fact, as of late, I've been telling my students, let's change the names, the word we use. Instead of consumers, let's say human behavior, because at the end of the day, it's humans that we're dealing with. So humans are dynamic, right? All of us, we change, we evolve, whether it's because of society, whether it's because of new goals and so on. So for businesses, it's really important to understand that human beings evolve, they change, and we need to stay connected with that. Being connected is fundamental. And in my course at Polymoda, we put so much emphasis on the research, whether it's focus groups or surveys, interviews, or observational research, to stay up to date with how society, how individuals are changing. So let's get closer to our topic now. So as a company, whether I am Dior or I'm a sports brand, I want to better understand my consumers' motives. Their motives for purchasing, their motives for coming to see us to satisfy one of their needs. And the reason I want to understand their motives is because if I understand their motives, I can ensure that the appropriate needs are being met. If I understand their motives for buying what they buy or coming to my store, I could assure that I communicate that those needs, those appropriate results are going to be met. Okay, so it's twofold. It's one, to make sure from a product point of view or service that those needs are being met, but also later on in my advertising, in my post-purchase communication, that I assure that I'm responding to that motivation. We're going to start off a little bit slow, like a warm-up, and I like to look at the two opposite ends, two opposite motivations. And here I'm going to ask you a few questions, so you could either raise your hand or even just in the chat write your answers. We're going to start with utilitarian motives. So there's two extremes. If you have utilitarian and then you have hedonism. So when we're looking at utilitarian, basically, if I look at this image on the screen that you see right now, you see this person climbing pretty intense mountains, rocks. So if we think about the shoes that this person purchased in order to go and enjoy this activity, what do you think the main motivations were behind their purchase? So like I said, you could even write it in the chat. What are the motivations behind purchasing those shoes? So let me see if I could see the chat. So Claudia, I don't see the chat right now when I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, some people is saying like comfort, functional, gripping to the rocks, being comfortable, grip, safety, extreme activities, endurance, safety, security.
Perfect. This is a brilliant group of people. Okay, you got it. Number one, security. I love the word grip, right? I mean, maybe there's some mountain climbers in this class. yeah, these shoes have to perform, right? I don't think this person went to the store or was online saying, what are the prettiest shoes I can find? Instead, it's like, okay, what's going to keep me alive? What's going to make this adventure safe, pleasant? And the other people, from what you're telling me, wrote functional. So these are utilitarian motives. The product has to perform. So we're looking at function, like you said, so great job there. It's absolutely necessary, right? This activity could not be done barefoot or with another pair of trainers or running shoes for other sports. And there's a level of practicality when we're looking at utilitarian needs. So here the consumer really puts a lot of attention on the tangible attributes of the product. So, you know, think of you, I don't know if there's any runners in this class. I'm a runner. And in fact, I'm a very healthy guy, but I have stability issues. I just basically need running shoes that offer me more support. So when I go into sports experts or the runner's corner, the first thing I communicate with the person working there is, where are your running shoes that are going to give me stability as I run? So that, like mentioned earlier, some safety, some proper landing, and so I can enjoy the sport I love to do in a safe, practical way. Now, of course, then I'm a fashion person, so I want to look good, but my taste preferences come second. It's really all about the functionality. It's all about the utilitarian needs. And it's really, really important that the companies understand that and communicate that, like I said earlier. So let's look at, I'm in Canada right now, by the way, so I didn't mention it earlier, but I share my time between Montreal, so I'm in North America like you, and Florence in Italy. So I'll be back in Florence at the beginning of January. And right now it's starting to get a little bit colder here. So I chose some Canadian examples for the utilitarian. Maybe some of you have been up north here in Canada and you know how it is. Canada Goose, a really successful brand, has done such a fantastic job at connecting with their consumers through communicating how they satisfy the consumer's utilitarian needs. So this snow mantra parka is known as the warmest coat on earth. You see that right away when you go on their website. That's the language that they use. And again, it's really important, not just in the development of the product, but also how you communicate your products and services, and using that language that's going to connect with what the customer cares about. Now, if they would have written the coolest parka on earth, maybe would have looked good. And some people said, yeah, wow, very cool. But do I really care? What I care about is it going to protect me from Canadian coldness, right? Or Scandinavian weather and so on. So Canada Goose is a great example, like I said, as far as the way the product is produced and also the language that they use to communicate. So if you see over here on the screen, on the second sentence, the snow mantra will carry you through the harshest of winter months in the harshest of climates. This is about function. And like I said, if you live in cities like Montreal, or I used to live in Berlin, also quite cold in the winter, it's not a, I want to be cool. It's a, I need to be warm, and it's real. So Canada Goose is one of those examples. And like I said, they communicate this throughout in all of their initiatives. And same thing, if you go to one of their stores, this is the language. Okay, now let's go to the opposite end. Let's get out of the cold and let's get into pleasure. So hedonism. What comes to mind when you think of the word hedonism? And you could just write in the chat, and maybe Claudia, you can tell me what's happening in the chat. So hedonism, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Beauty, love, pleasure, indulgement, easy life, pleasure, pampered. And I think that's all. Pleasure again, knownness, unnecessary.
Okay. It all sounds pretty good though, except for unnecessary. Maybe it is necessary, but indulgence, pleasure, I love it, right? So hedonism is all of that. We see it from this beautiful painting. Here you have the Bacchus by Caravaggio, which is in the Uffizi in Florence. At Polymoda, we really encourage our students to connect with the arts, especially being in a city like Florence. In their research, they go quite deep in different avenues in order to then be stronger in how they develop their projects and so on. But Bacchus is the ultimate of hedonists, right? The god of wine and pleasure. And so that's what we're looking at. We often think of cities as quite hedonistic, or vacation destinations. So Berlin, where I once lived, was known to be quite hedonistic. A lot of partying, Ibiza. I'm sure in Mexico, I think back when I was younger, I came to Mexico, I went to Cancun, right, because we wanted to go have fun. It was quite hedonistic. So that's what hedonism really is, right? About pleasure. I love the word indulgence that was shared. We have another painting here, another example of the triumph of Bacchus. So there's an element of leisure, of even just having fun with other people. And again, this idea of ultimate indulgence. So a little bit different from utilitarian needs. When we're looking at hedonism, think fantasy, think excitement. And we could also say a certain level of like upgrading the self-confidence to the next level. Here, what the consumer really cares about is escapism, right? Sometimes they want to just escape their routine, their more mundane aspects of their life. And there's a high level of emotion when we're looking at satisfying hedonistic needs. I'll show you an image right now, which beautifully demonstrates hedonism. So period of time, the supermodels. The supermodels were attached to certain brands that I'll show you an example of. But this image, is a pure example of the party, the good times, the beauty, and this level of indulgence that was mentioned. I'm not sure if any of you have watched the movie Marie Antoinette by Kirsten Dunst, but I definitely recommend it. Marie Antoinette, and in this movie, is the prime example of a hedonist, right? This ultimate pleasure-seeking individual, very high on indulgence, and the movie demonstrates this beautifully, excuse me. So the first brand that comes to mind when I think of hedonism is Versace, right? We have this image here. There's Donatella, and there she is with the supermodels of today, having a good time. If you listen to Donatella also in many interviews, she'll talk about that. For her, fashion has to be fun. And this has been part of the DNA for the brand at the beginning and still to this day. They're very successful at connecting to consumers for who have hedonistic motives. Hedonism, though, can also be satisfied by more conceptual brands. So here we have Loewe. The last few years, we've had Jonathan Anderson doing incredible activities, fashion for Loewe. And as you see from this image, this doesn't seem like the most practical of dresses, but certainly something that is fantastical, right? You're definitely going to stand out when you get to the party, and you're definitely having fun with clothing, which is great. So, and all of it is fine, right? Utilitarian motives are great, hedonistic motives are great. They're there, and some brands decide which direction they're going to take. What's important, again, is to understand what you're trying to achieve, connecting that and communicating that later. We have the famous elephant bag from Loewe in this image. And then, of course, when we look at luxury, many companies actually satisfy both utilitarian and hedonistic needs, right? So a consumer, many of us, maybe some of you, I know myself, there's a bit of both. I want to satisfy, I need a new sweater that protects me from the cold, but I want something that's cool, it's going to make me stand out, maybe even gives me a little bit of self-confidence. Then you have brands like Prada. Prada has always done such a great job at satisfying both utilitarian and hedonistic needs. In fact, it's one of the rest of the ingredients to the recipe of Prada that works so well. And many consumers buy it for that reason. Okay, so now that I've warmed you up, and I think this was something pretty straightforward, and many of you can understand it based on your own behaviors, right? Sometimes you've made choices to satisfy utilitarian needs. Sometimes you've made choices for hedonistic reasons. So that's the starting point. But we go a little bit deeper as companies when we're trying to connect with a group, a consumer. So there's 4 needs that can be satisfied by products or services, and that's what we're going to look at today. So the first need I'm going to introduce you to is the need for achievement. And when we're looking at the need for achievement, we have to recognize that the consumer values certain criteria. So in this case, the consumer values success. They value evidence of results. They value status, and they want the feedback, and they want that feedback to be very, very clear. So I'm going to ask you to participate again. And if anybody wants to open their microphone, that would be nice as well. Can you think of any companies, and it doesn't have to be in fashion, okay? So we can look outside of the fashion industry, which in fact, I often encourage my students to do. There's so much we could learn from other industries. So can you think of a company that does a really good job at satisfying the need for achievement. And again, remember the consumer values, these 4 criteria. So go ahead.
Lamborghini.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah.
I would say North Face.
North Face. Okay, can you explain that a little bit? I'm curious.
It's just like, it's very like doing like extreme activities. So you have to like, the achievement is of doing something like climbing a mountain or something.
Okay, so almost like if you're wearing North Face, it's because I'm somebody who's maybe climbed that mountain, had some like adventure successes.
Yeah, somewhat athletic.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. And I didn't hear that, but I like it. Anything else? Any other company? So I'll give you an example, okay? So
I would say Nike and Red Bull.
Nike and Red Bull. Okay, good. So also in that sports. So I'm going to give you a little story of somebody, and then maybe you can guess some other ones as well. So this individual has studied their whole lives to become a lawyer, and they finally achieve that, and they get a job, and then eventually they become partner. And they might purchase something for themselves because they're proud of this accomplishment. But something that this character may buy for themselves because they've achieved this goal, and now they want to know, and they want others maybe to know as well. All right, so I'll introduce you to a company that. Oh, go ahead. I think I heard.
In the chat, they are all saying other brands, for example, Chanel, Ferrari, Emirates Airline, Rolex.
Okay, very nice. Okay, I think that there's a car vibe in this group. Lamborghini, Ferrari. Rolex is one of the most straightforward examples. So I use Rolex as my industry example, as a company who does a great job at satisfying the need for achievement. And you will see it in their video advertisements. If any of you still read the print paper and you read the Financial Times, for instance, and there's an advertisement from Rolex, pay attention to the words, the language, and the copywriting. And you'll see how they use words like success, results, accomplishment, because Rolex definitely is one of the companies that satisfies this need. I want to share a commercial with you. It's 1 minute long. Just bear with me as I change what the screen I'm sharing. Let me get that. Hopefully it goes rather fast. Okay. I think it should be okay. Claudia, can you confirm that you see every Rolex tells a story on the screen?
Yeah, we're still watching the presentation.
Okay, is it?
But not the video.
You don't see the video?
No, we don't see the video.
Okay, so I will do something. Let's see if this works now. All right, so. Reaching for your dream. How about now?
Yeah, no, we can see the video.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so this video is not very long. It's 50 seconds long, and you can watch it later, or you can find other ones. Again, if you're really interested in this idea of satisfying the need for achievement, or if you're working on projects later on, and you work for a company and you realize, hey, this is the gap we can go and satisfy. Like I said, Rolex is a great example. So let's watch this video. And maybe, like I said, give a little bit more attention to the words being used and enjoy.
Reaching for your dreams was always something I tried to do. World #1, Grand Slams, whatever it is in life, believe you can achieve the impossible. 2009 was a very, very special year. I just won the French Open for the first time, and I was going into Wimbledon trying to break Sampras's record and make it to the finals. It was just this epic match. Everybody was there, a lot of legends. Bjorn Borg sitting there, Rod Laver was there as well, and it was just nice to feel the love from the tennis family, which to me is really important. When I finally was able to lift the trophy again, it was with this particular one. It was a beautiful feeling. Today, it's a watch I look back and share memories with. I look at it and I see Wimbledon. I see me holding up the trophy.
Okay, so there you go. I'm gonna stop share here. I'm gonna start it. Okay. So, you know, every time he looks at his watch, clear feedback, it reminds him of his success at Wimbledon. So as I say, you know, the Rolex advertisements, they use film directors, producers, other athletes, men, women, of course, explorers as well. Now they've really started working with some partners who are into the preservation of the earth and are pioneers when it comes to the subject and so on. So that's what Rolex does. It satisfies your need for achievement. So a great example here, I have some screenshots from their website just to also demonstrate in the copywriting, right? Because if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, understanding the motives, well, we want to ensure that the proper facts, the correct information is being communicated to the consumer. So here, for over a century, Rolex watches have accompanied explorers and achievers around the world, from the top of the highest mountains to the deepest reaches of the ocean. Today, Rolex is present at the most prestigious events in golf and so on. So I think this pretty much sums it up. And let's look at another example now. And let's look at actually a clothing brand. So not too long ago, I don't know if you stay up to date with the fashion weeks, but this year in particular, New York got a lot of attention, and in particular, Tom Ford. Some people were saying maybe he's going to come close to retiring soon. His company is up for sale. I don't know what's up right now with the status of that possibility. But most recently, Christina Binkley wrote in Vogue Business, in Hollywood, wearing Tom Ford today is akin to wearing Armani in the 1990s, carrying bragging rights and an aura of powerful suiting. So again, this idea, you know, we have David Beckham here, one of the most famous individuals in the world, wearing Tom Ford. And again, this is somebody who's had success in sport, success in Hollywood, and chooses to wear a brand, a designer that screams success. And this has been part of the Tom Ford brand, part of the Tom Ford story. In fact, when I worked at the Corner Berlin, at the luxury store, the Corner Berlin, a lot of the men actually who were high profile individuals were shopping at our store and also shopping at the Tom Ford store, especially for their, let's say, special events or work related events. And it gave them that sense of success also. And fashion is quite powerful for that, right? It can make you feel a certain way. I'm a big fan of Yves Saint Laurent. So when I wear something from Saint Laurent, this makes me feel quite confident and so on. So the power of the brand and the product is huge. Okay, so now that we looked at the need for achievement, let's look at the second of the four. We have the need for affiliation. And I particularly love this one. I find it quite interesting. It's quite of the moment as well. And when we're looking at the need for affiliation, we look at the following values, and that is community, being in the company of others, and associations. And, you know, over the last 5 years, there's been so much attention put on the idea of community, right? There's all these online communities. So many companies are trying to build their communities and so on. But many of them miss the mark. And I asked myself, are they missing the mark because they're perhaps ignoring two other factors, which is being in the company of others and being associated to a certain company? And the real need is for affiliation. So again, let's do the same exercise. Can you think of any company? And again, you know, I loved how earlier you went to Ferrari and Lamborghini and you went outside of the fashion industry. Can you think of any companies that do a great job at satisfying the need for affiliation? And here, the individual, maybe even yourselves, you could think of yourself if you have this need, cares about community, being in the company of others, and being associated to something. So you could open your microphones and share, or Claudia, if anybody's writing in the chat, let me know.
They're saying United Colors with Benetton, Dior, Tiffany, Apple.
Nike, Adidas.
Okay, Nike and Adidas.
Hermes.
Okay.
EcoAlf.
What was the last one?
EcoAlf.
Okay.
Golf clubs.
I did that last one. I didn't hear it either. Can you repeat it, please?
Golf clubs.
Golf clubs. Valeria, is it you speaking?
Yeah.
Okay, you're in the right direction. I like it. Can you elaborate on that, please?
They give you a community and some status so you can like be part of something bigger.
Okay. And you go play golf with other people, right? So you might be even having lunch at the golf club with some friends, some people that you might do business with. Okay, so the golf club is actually an amazing example. And I guess there must be common in Mexico. It's quite common here in Canada as well. And many people will want to join or be part of a certain golf club. Same thing with certain gyms, right? I want to be a member of that gym because I get associated with perhaps a certain social class, right? A certain wealth level. And I'm going to be in the company of others, maybe people I want to do business with or people who I want to network with. And I'm part of this particular community. There's a great example. I don't know if there's, I'm sure there's one in Mexico City, or I imagine there would be one. Maybe I speak too soon, but the Soho House. Is anybody familiar with the Soho House, this hotel chain, which has been always a members only? And in fact, they really focus on people that work in creative industries. And I remember when I was in Berlin, if you were a member of the Soho House, well, you had access to their restaurant and you would see other people in creative industries and you would go to their gym. And so it kind of profiled you. And it checked all these boxes for somebody who's looking for the need for affiliation. I've had students in the past use the example of even Harley Davidson, right? Where you're part of this subculture, if you want. So let's look at, so really good job, everyone, with what you've shared. I think sometimes also of the universities, especially the American universities, right? Harvard. And the thing that's key here is the being associated, right? So the golf club, so maybe I'm associated to a certain social class. Same thing with the Soho House. If I go to Harvard, I'm wearing those Harvard sweatshirts while I'm part of my Harvard community. And then when I'm out there at the grocery store on my way to the gym and I'm wearing my Harvard sweatshirt, well, it tells everybody I'm part of one of the smartest, best schools in the world. So let's go look at some industry examples. So I was checking earlier this morning to make sure that you would know of this company, Lululemon. So I saw their stores in Mexico. Lululemon is a Canadian company. And like I said, today, because I'm in Montreal, I have this desire to showcase some Canadian brands as well, as we talk about a lot of luxury brands. And Lululemon, maybe you don't know this because I assume you're younger than me. But when Lululemon started, okay, it was all about satisfying that need for affiliation. And they opened these boutiques in some really nice neighborhoods, a little bit more affluent. And yoga at the time was actually quite novel. And they would host yoga classes in their stores. And then, you would see, it was mainly women at the time, on a Tuesday afternoon, you'd see some women going around shopping and maybe having lunch in these really stylish leggings with this little symbol. And eventually you knew that, if she was wearing those leggings and that symbol and having maybe a smoothie or a salad at some place, well, she was associated to a certain social class, but also a certain lifestyle, more importantly, right? Somebody who cares for their well-being, somebody who does yoga, which, like I said, at the time was quite novel, and so on. And they were making sure that these individuals be together in the company of others, and this community, this yoga community, was growing. And it was brilliant. And the rest is history. Now, Lululemon is a huge company, global, and they haven't ignored what they've done. Because like I said, they had recognized that they had a consumer who was looking to have this affiliation being satisfied. Today, they have running groups to satisfy this. And it's really, really been a part of their success. Somebody mentioned Hermes earlier, and it's a great answer because Hermes, traditionally, we think of Hermes as a brand that satisfies the need for achievement, and they still do. But Hermes is, like I said, a leader, brilliant, and they stay up to date with what consumers want and how they change. And so companies can satisfy multiple needs. They need to know their core, but they could certainly start investing in satisfying others. And they've done this. Recently, in the last couple of years, they've created these exercise workshops. They've done it in Brooklyn. They've done it in Los Angeles. Here you have an image, a very stylish workout you can do this weekend. And so they invite individuals to come join the Hedonism team for a workout where people come together. This community is being formed, even when you think of cities like Brooklyn, right? It's very community centric, and then being associated to a certain lifestyle. They've created Hedonism Fit to support achieving this initiative well. And here we have more images. And like I said, I just want to take a second here and remind or repeat or reinforce the need for affiliation is on the rise. And there's a lot of exciting opportunities here for you young individuals, creatives, entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, with the rise of urban loneliness, there's also some opportunities, which is the fortunate part, where companies, you think about cities like New York, Stockholm, London, even Montreal, where more and more people are on their own, living in smaller apartments and so on. Humans often then will want to seek activities and so on, where they could feel like they're a part of something. And so this is something, like I said, unfortunately, there's this rise of urban loneliness. However, what's exciting is that companies can find solutions to that and be a part of something pretty great. Okay, so now the need for uniqueness. So oftentimes when we think of the young consumers, fashion is so obsessed with trying to know what young people want. And one thing that young people have often wanted is to be unique, or have this need to be unique. But it's not just young people, right? There's some individuals out there who choose to buy certain fashions, certain products, even furniture, to be different. So here what they value is originality, product rarity, exclusivity. They want to stand out. But it's been a little bit harder, right, over the last few years. Why? Well, you have the fast fashion, you have Zara's everywhere, for example. So you're not going on a Saturday night to a party and you bought something at Zara thinking you're going to be original. You might look great, but you do risk, encountering someone with the same blouse or the same dress. And this has also been the case now for luxury fashion. Once upon a time, maybe you had to go to certain cities, capital cities, to find your Valentino or Dior, well, Dior is still quite difficult to acquire, but let's say Valentino. You would have to go to one of their stores or one of the department stores like Bergdorf's, or here in Montreal, Holt Renfrew. But today we can all right now just go online, right? I can go on Essence, I can go on My Teresa, and so on. So the product has become less exclusive. The other reality, thankfully, we have a richer world. So despite hearing about so much doom and gloom in the world, society at large have more richer countries and richer people. So the ability to acquire has become more vast and more a reality for more people. So the companies out there that have been trying to satisfy the need for uniqueness have to come up with ideas, ways to achieve that. So can you tell me, again, you can open your microphones or just in the chat, what's been going on, what's become quite popular over the last few years in our industry, where we see people trying to satisfy the need for uniqueness. So think of the consumer. I want to go out this weekend. I want to be guaranteed that I have something that nobody else has. Where may I go to buy something, or what may I do?
Erewhon.
Where?
Erewhon, this place in LA where you can find all these organic stuff, but the price is really high.
Okay.
Erewhon.
Okay. Oh, nice. I don't know this story. Okay, nice. Anything? Where else would you go? Say it again.
Thrifting.
Okay. So, Jimmy, is that how I should pronounce it, or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, you sure?
Kime.
Kime. Okay. Yes, I had a feeling it was that, but I didn't want to make a mistake. So tell me, you said thrift?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind elaborating on that? So when you.
Sometimes, for example, if you wanna, I don't know, be sure no one thing as you can go thrifting, and like for sure there's like nobody that's gonna have the same thing that you're wearing. And
yeah,
also,
right? You found it. There's one of them. There's not even multiple sizes, so it's a bit of luck. Good treasure hunting, I guess.
Yeah, or you can also redesign like the pieces you find there.
Okay, awesome, perfect. So thrifting, the rise of vintage is huge. Okay, we see it. We're seeing companies.
Sami Nero.
You see.
Go ahead, Griselda.
Okay, using filters to use the gloves and accessories and shoes. I think that it's something that no other brands has. Not everyone is using it.
Or places where people used to have the lunch maybe, and one time one friend told me about the places where people meeting for have conversations or eat something and hanging a good time like that.
Okay. And I see one other, thank you so much. And one other person has their hands up, Ximena.
It's Jimena.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. I would say upcycling brands too. There's one called One Of that upcycles high-end products into new clothes. And I think the upcycling movement has grown a lot. So I would say that too.
Amazing. Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. I see there's more people that want to share some, but we're going to give you some, I'm going to show you some examples, but upcycling, companies working with some bed stock, individuals that was mentioned earlier, actually buying something and playing around with it, making it their own. And in particular, the rise of vintage. Okay, vintage has been booming. It's a huge opportunity because it's like, was said by one of your peers, I'm pretty guaranteed if I go shopping this weekend in a thrift shop, treasure hunting, we could call it, I find something quite special, original, rare, and most likely I'll stand out when I go to that party in my new jacket or new blouse. So look at some brands that have always aimed to satisfy the need for uniqueness. So you have Maison Margiela. Okay, so when Margiela came out, it was incredible. And it was truly one of those brands that was connecting with that individual who loved luxury, but wanted something different. Whether it was the construction, the fabrics, he always was able to create a product that you would stand out in, and it was rather exclusive. You have Raf Simons. So, Raf Simons is a big fan of Margiela, a big inspiration for him. And I've worked for Raf Simons, as Claudia shared with you. And Raf Simons, like many other designers, wants to grow as a company, has responsibilities to grow as well. But sometimes that growth is out of step with what their core consumer wants, which is the need for uniqueness. In the sense that even though the product is unique, if it's sold in more stores, well, doesn't that take away a little bit of that exclusivity? As we saw earlier, as I'm going back to that slide, as one of the criteria, one of the aspects people value. And like I said, I worked for the brand, and they have such diehard fans, like almost like as if Raf Simons is a music band and they follow him. But again, one of the things that they expect and want is that exclusivity. So Raf Simons brilliantly created History of My World. So you can go online after and find it. It's basically a website with what Raf loves and limited edition items, archive items, that he's brought back. So here you have, for instance, a 2001 hoodie. So the Redux, and then, this has been a way to, like I said, have this limited editions, this way of exclusive drops, and so on. So even just by the name, History of My World, and not choosing to make it rafsimons.com shows that they understand the need of not ignoring one of the core aspects to what they do, which is satisfy the need for uniqueness. Here, like I said earlier, the limited edition item. And then I think one of, great example, especially the beginning years of Supreme. Supreme, I remember some of my students, being obsessed with Supreme. And, at the beginning, it was super, super hard. It still is in some places to acquire Supreme. So just look at this image on the screen. You had people standing outside, waiting those lines, those Thursdays to get a piece of Supreme. Right? So they were doing these drops, there was limited editions, and huge, widely successful. In fact, Supreme has, definitely influenced the way the fashion industry operates today due to their business model. Their collaborations, they're pioneers when it comes to collaborations. Today, so many companies are doing them, but if you go back in time, Supreme was really one of the leaders, and especially this idea of collaborating, streetwear and luxury. So starting with this image over here, we have the collaboration with Comme Garçon, very beautiful, very successful. And the one that I think really was a huge change for the luxury industry was the one with Louis Vuitton. So when Supreme did that collaboration, whether people liked it or not, to the critics, it was successful, and it made other luxury leaders pay attention. So this was, it hit all that criteria that we said earlier, right? Exclusivity, standing out, rarity, and quite original. The other initiative that we see, which you guys already mentioned, the rise of vintage, well, a lot of designers, a lot of brands are creating initiatives to sell their own vintage. So to make sure that it's, a genuine, authentic product, so there's a certification, but they realize that a lot of consumers want that. And that was one of the things that they were satisfying earlier before, let's say, globalization. So Valentino has made a lot of efforts to reacquire their vintage clothing and resell it through different channels. So they have this project in Tokyo. And so again, you can't guarantee that you buy a new Valentino and go to that party and stand out. But if you buy a dress from, 1996, well, yeah, the odds of you being the only one at that event wearing that Valentino dress are really, really high. So again, for that customer who wants true uniqueness, that customer who really values product rarity, being original, this is one option. Okay, and we're gonna wrap up with the need for power. Okay, so I'll do a recap quickly. We did the need for achievement, the need for affiliation, the need for uniqueness, and now we get to the need for power. So before I start talking about the values, this has nothing to do with power dressing. Often, when I explain power, students immediately think of Giorgio Armani, Jill Sander, and this idea of, those jackets that give you so much strength. And it's not about that. The consumer has the need for power. What they care about is being highly involved in the process. Okay, so picture power and hands. I want to get involved. An example I like to use here is, one of my dreams, one day to build a lake house. Okay, so, and then working really closely with the architects and the designers and going through all of the steps. Maybe some of you have already done that, or you have family members who achieved that. And they were, like I said, almost like the architect, the designer, by working really close to them. So they value control, they value involvement, mastery. So in fashion right now, we're looking a little bit more at this new term, or maybe you've heard it. It's not new, but it's relatively new. It's still not part of our everyday language, but it's the prosumer. So the idea of consuming what you produce. And Hermes, so I love that somebody shared Hermes earlier as an example, because it's one of my industry leaders, and I use them in many of the examples because they keep paying attention to how individuals are dynamic and also how different generations may have different needs, right? So Hermes has this service where basically any of your dreams can come true. So if you read right under this, if you read the subhead here, I'll read it for you. In the workshops in Pantin, our craftspeople and creative teams take measures to ensure excellence and explore the world of imagination to provide a bespoke service the size of your dreams. Okay, so those last couple of words, the size of your dreams, is an example of a company realize, hey, people want more involvement, and there's huge opportunity there. And as you see with this image, for example, on the left, these two individuals playing foosball with these head masks, accessories, and so on, made by Hermes. So exceptional pieces meeting the need for power. And there you go, some more examples. And if we bring it down, bring it closer to perhaps you or recent realities, the lockdowns that many of us experienced, Generation Z got crafty. And the do-it-yourself movement really has taken off. So that was mentioned a little bit earlier when it came to satisfying the need for uniqueness. And I think the do-it-yourself is a little bit of both, right? For that individual who wants something special, but also for that individual who just wants to be highly involved in the process. And this is something that some companies have been paying attention to. So we have personalization, but when we're looking at need for power, it's really next level. Okay, so they're there, the consumer is there with you. They're a leader in that decision making. And that is it. So those are the 4 needs that we looked at. So like I said, we started off with thinking about utilitarian and hedonism, 2 extremes that we can all resonate with or understand. And then we dove a little bit deeper and we looked at the need for achievement. So Rolex as an example of a company who achieves, it satisfies that. We have the need for affiliation. So here we spoke about Lululemon. We also used examples like Harley Davidson or the Soho House, a beautiful company. The need for uniqueness. So, Raf Simons with his website called History of My World, to really connect with that, the subculture that is really obsessed with him, or Valentino and their vintage initiatives. And finally, the need for power, where customers want to be involved. They want to have a say. So whether it's this, customization or, making people's dreams come true, this is one of the needs. So I thank you all for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm here and I'd be happy to answer them. So I see a few hands up. I hope you enjoyed the lecture and that it was, my volume was good as well. So
everything was perfect, Davide. I'm Arturo, I'm part of Encuentro Creativo. So before going into the questions, we're gonna see a short video and let me switch to Spanish to tell the audience something, right? Okay, chicos, vamos a ver un video rápido y los que no se sientan cómodos hablando en inglés, escriban sus preguntas en el chat. Los que quieran hacer las preguntas, levanten la mano y cuando volvamos a este video, hacemos las preguntas. Perfecto.
Hola, ¿cómo están? Yo soy Ana Magdaleno. El año pasado tuve la oportunidad de estudiar la maestría en Sustainable Fashion en Polymoda y considero que esta experiencia verdaderamente me cambió la vida. Primero que nada me permitió conocer gente de todo el mundo, así que mi red de amistades y de networking realmente creció muchísimo. También por estudiar aquí se me abrieron las puertas a grandes oportunidades como ser publicada por Vogue Italia y Le Officiel. Vivir en Florencia simplemente fue maravilloso y ya estando ahí es muy fácil moverte y continuar explorando la gastronomía y los paisajes de Italia, que todos sabemos que es maravilloso. Y algo que es una de las cosas que yo más agradezco fue poder conocer verdaderamente a mis maestros, quienes son personas que ocupan posiciones importantes en grandes casas de moda. Ellos siempre tuvieron muy buena disposición a escucharte, conocerte y ayudarte. Entonces, si están pensando en estudiar acá, yo se los recomiendo 100%, vale la pena, abre puertas, pasas a formar parte de esta red de networking que es muy sólida y muy importante y bueno, viene acompañado de un gran estatus que también es reconocido en todo el mundo. Entonces, anímense.
Perfecto, veo algunas manos levantadas, entonces we're gonna get a question from Jimena Mejía. Jimena, si gustas prender tu micrófono y hacer la pregunta en inglés.
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you for the webinar. I really loved it. I found it very useful. I would like to know if you've ever heard about a brand that was able to touch all 4 of the needs that you mentioned, if that's ever possible. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for enjoying the webinar. I'm happy. So you motivated me and reassured me. So now I feel like I could a bit relax. I'm thinking, the one that comes to mind, and based on also the examples that I provided, is really Hermes. Because if we look at the thing with the need for power, by default, they also satisfy the need for uniqueness, right? So I'm just thinking of that image right now when those 2 individuals are playing foosball, Biardini. I don't know how you say it in Spanish, but you remember that image with those 2 horse masks. So that's quite unique. They're probably the only ones that have that and so on. So Hermes, and we often don't think of Hermes from that point of view. We immediately think of Hermes like extreme luxury and more on the achievement orientation. But in fact, their initiatives prove that they've been able to hit all four of those needs.
Thank you so much. We have a question. Sorry, I thought you were done with them.
Yeah, one other thing, as far as like when you're aiming to satisfy new needs, so all companies need to have their core and not forget about that, even as they expand, right? So I'll use Lululemon for that reason, because Lululemon, I recall, you know, when I was in we're going back about 20 years ago, you know, or 18 years ago, and it was small shops in these affluent neighborhoods. And it was really the affiliation. But then as they grew, like many companies want to, things changed, right? And you could lose that, but you can't. It's really, really important that you stay true to that core and that ability to connect with that consumer that you'll always satisfy, or new consumers who will come to you for that. So authenticity is really important in the initiatives, and assuring before moving on to satisfying other needs that the one that your main one that you originally started out is well done, taken care of, and always up to date.
About the needs of power, is always necessary to make an invest in the society where you wanted to make a brand.
Sabina, do you mind repeating, because I got a little bit not disconnected, but I didn't hear all the words clearly. Can you repeat your question, please?
I listened something about the consumer's value. Is always necessary to make, for example, one investigation of anthropology, for example, of the society where you were to make where you were to do or make a branding, like if you wanna to expose, for example, your ideas about clothes. Before you have to make invest to the people that it's living in that place, like the environment, explore the environment of them.
Okay, I think I understood. So Sabina, let me just make sure I paraphrase the question and then I'll answer it hopefully correctly. So are you asking me, do we need to do some research regarding the consumer in their city, their country, their culture, when absolutely, yes. Absolutely. So today we looked at satisfying these four needs, just as a topic in consumer behavior. But yes, before you do anything, you know, well, I wouldn't say necessarily before, but while, you have to understand who is your target audience. So, you know, my lecture 2 of consumer behavior, if you come to Polymoda, is that we start our segmentation. And I say, okay, I'm going to create a brand, and my starting point is going to be North America. So, and in more specifically, I want to target a certain age group. You know, I'm going to start in Mexico, for example. Well, yes, you won't need to study the culture, the reality.
Which they ask for,
Absolutely, because there's our behaviors are influenced by our culture. I have a whole lecture on cultural intelligence. But for example, as a Canadian, I'm Italian-Canadian, okay?
Or the weather, something like that.
Even culture, let's say, like we come from a culture traditionally. Today we've evolved, but practicality is quite common for Canadians. I don't know if anybody has any Canadian friends, because of the weather, because it's a new country as well. And so companies that have been successful here have been like Canada Goose, Lululemon as well. They have a real purpose. And luxury has gotten more popular here in the last few years. Whereas when I'm in Italy, many consumers go out a lot.
For example, about the clothes because I am from Mexico, in the sur of the Mexico, exists many like towns. And in a town, people ask always like clothes embroidered, like woven clothes with embroidering. They always are asking them because in like festivities for the women's 15, 16 years or weddings or presentations and some stuff like that. They always ask clothes like embroidery, like clothes that like when you are embroidering, always. So people used to, that's the work that the people employ in the town, because it's that we always are asking that. So it's a work that maybe the 80% of the population it's her job, it's their job of them.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Thank you so much, Sabina.
So we have a question here in the chat that I think is really interesting. And it's from Mariana Serrano, and she asked, from the four needs, the needs that you listed in your presentation, which one do you think is the one that will gain more strength in the next couple of years?
So I'll repeat just to make sure I understood the question clearly. So out of the four needs that we looked at today, which one will become more popular in the next few years based on my opinion? Okay.
Yeah, in your opinion.
Okay, so if we had that magic ball, I could advise all the companies on the right direction. But based on, so at Polymoda, and in particular in my course, we look at what's happening in society at large, right? So what are the new social trends, what's happening, good or bad? And this rise of urban loneliness, which I mentioned earlier, right? Especially in big cities. So you have, this is happening in Stockholm. There's a lot of studies on this. This is happening in cities like New York, London, where many people are living in condos. Maybe Mexico City is similar. I don't know. It's a big city, but many people are living in 3.5 or studios. They're far away from their families and so on. And so there's this rise of, hey, you know what, being on my own may be great when I'm 24, 25, but as I'm getting older, maybe not so much. And so if this continues, and if the individuals don't find the solutions to that, I foresee the need for affiliation being more important. And you actually also see it in other areas where many individuals have committed to a lot of social causes, right? They're part of environmental groups, or they're part of different societies, because this makes them feel like they belong and they're a part of something and they're associated to a certain message. So this is really, really important to gauge where things are going. And then as a company, to benefit from that, we need to look at what's happening in society. So, you know, in my classes, my students have to come prepared to talk about the news. What's going on? And I don't want them to watch the news to get sad about all the bad stuff that's going on, but just being attentive to what is happening. And there's an element of sociology and anthropology in all of this. So my prediction is the need for affiliation, to answer your question.
Perfect. No, that's perfect. And you described Mexico City like perfectly as well. We have a question. Alexa Razo está alzando la mano. Puedes activar tu micrófono y hacer la pregunta en inglés.
Hi. First of all, I would really like to highlight that I learned a lot in this webinar. And well, my question is, what kind of reference material do you recommend about consumer needs?
Okay, well, Alexa, thank you. And I'm happy you learned a lot. So this is the purpose. So again, I'm feeling quite good. I'm gonna enjoy my evening even more so with this positive feedback. So as far as, you know, I encourage everyone to read, and McKinsey is a good source. Let's say if you want to look at a big consulting firm's research, I think obviously your local journals are beneficial as well. I'm not a big fan of social media because I think there's always some kind of filter interpretation that's happening, and there's a lot of different types of information coming to you at once. So I believe in concentrated learning. So if I'm reading an article in the newspaper or online on McKinsey, that's all I'm focusing on. Whereas if you're getting your information from Instagram, which could be very valuable, but there's a lot of different information coming at you, right? Whether it's a friend's vacation or some social issue that's going on. The other activity I encourage you to do is to literally pay attention. And that could be by just going out more. I'm not saying you're not going out, but just going out with the intention of seeing how people are behaving. And observational research is so beneficial. It's one of the research that I have always used and still do. You know, if I go to a restaurant, what are people wearing? You know, if I'm in Paris, it's great for
okay.
So observational research and just reading McKinsey, reading the journals, Vogue Business, Business of Fashion. These are good sources.
Thank you so much. We have a couple more questions, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So Fernanda Sergio tiene su mano alzada. ¿Puedes hacer la pregunta en inglés y activar tu micrófono?
Sí. Hi, thank you
again for this talk. I study communications, but I am passionate about fashion. And my question is, what do you think about the influence that famous people has on this increment of desire and achievement? Because you just told what you think about social media, but obviously there has been a lot of social media fashion influencers that have like this last word on what's fashion and what's not. So thank you again, and that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for the good question and critical thinking. I love it. So I'm not a fan of social media. I do have LinkedIn because I do see the value of keeping my network alive. The influence of celebrity has always been powerful and will continue. So there's no denying that. The way it is done changes, and it will change again. So this is this period, and there was the Hollywood glamour years, and that evolves as well. So at the moment, some of those influencers, do I like it? No. Does it work? Yes. I prefer an approach like Rolex, where the partnership seems quite genuine and relevant. I'm not as much of a fan when an influencer, a celebrity is everywhere. I would hope that the consumer is a little bit more critical when they see somebody wearing two completely different types of brands and speaking about them as if it's their identity. So, but it is powerful. It works. There's no denying that. This is a personal preference. I don't care for it. But yes, it's always been powerful, and it will continue to be to be powerful. I do think there's going to be new ways of celebrity, if you want, being an influence. Let's hope. I hope anyway.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. We have another. No, it was great, I guess. Alejandro Castellanos, puedes activar tu micrófono y hacer la pregunta en inglés.
Sure thing. So thanks for the chat. It was very informative. You already stated your lack of love for social media, but when it comes to high brands, high fashion, how much do these brands listen to trends or social media, in particular TikTok? That's where Gen Z and the new generations are looking forth, for inspiration and other. So
yeah, TikTok has become a major player. So social media is not my area of expertise. So I don't want to answer something about it incorrectly. But I can tell, yes, brands are definitely active and paying attention, using it as a source of information for a variety of initiatives.
Okay, thank you.
But I wish I could answer you more, Alejandro, but like I said, it's not my area of expertise. So I mentioned that I don't have I don't really care for it too much on a personal level earlier when I answered one of the questions. But it's not part of the consumer behavior course, where we're diving deeper into, like I said, the motivations of people. And then the way that is addressed through marketing initiatives and so on, that's different. And that's where maybe the social media experts come in.
Can I take the chance and ask for a quick question then? That's a bit more on your. Oh, okay, so on the parka, the snow parka example that you mentioned. I was curious that the copy says something around the lines of our most famous product, and it mentions it repeatedly. So when it comes to making this product, this star product, why do you need to reinforce that that's our most famous product?
Let me just go see that slide, actually. So give me a second. Because, okay, so you're referencing the Canada Goose slide.
Correct.
So yes. This is about the most renowned as the warmest coat. So it's the message is the warmest. So arguably our most famous parka, the Snow Mantra, is renowned as the warmest coat on earth. So again, it's repeating that it's going to work. So if you really want, so the idea here is that if you really want to be protected from the harsh climates. So I was using the example of when you're in Montreal. I remember when I was living in Berlin, it gets really cold in the winter. So when I went shopping for a winter coat, for example, I ended up buying something from Woolrich. But my main objective, and I remember what the salesperson was, which one is going to protect me the best? So we looked at Canada Goose as an example for a brand that satisfies utilitarian. And so the messaging is repeated because what they do is protect you from the cold.
But wouldn't the message be a bit both hedonistic and utilitarian, because it's not only saying our most famous, it's not just saying our most renowned, our warmest, but it's also a bit of show-offy, you know, kind of both mixed messages a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And, you know, so here maybe we can look at that message as satisfying both utilitarian and hedonistic, but the core, the most renowned for warmest wouldn't exist without the warmest. So the main thing is still the warmest, which is a function. That's a good point. And
okay, I see your point. It's more like an adjective of
exactly
a utilitarian point. Okay,
exactly.
okay, I see. Thank you.
And you know, but it's a really good. I love the critical thinking, and I encourage that. So good for you. And Canada Goose is also positioned as quite a luxurious utilitarian product, right? So when you're looking at luxury, oftentimes there's elements of hedonism. And then we went to the next example. We looked at Prada, right? So a company that satisfies both. So it's good that you caught that on, but the renowned and the most famous wouldn't exist without their ability to satisfy utilitarian needs. Thank you so much, Alejandro.
Thank you.
Perfect. I guess we will make one more question, like talking, and then I'll read one, and then we'll finish. So I see Roxana is raising her hand. Roxana, ¿puedes poner tu micrófono y hacer la pregunta en inglés?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your time and the effort that you put in the webinar. I would like to know if there is a specific category in which we can include like environmental care and social responsibility, because I know that the consumers can influence in the production process by manifesting that they value when a company is environmental friendly and have a social responsibility, or also other factors like inclusiveness and so on. So is there a specific category for this, or in which category that you already mentioned we can include this?
So that's a really good question. Thank you, Roxana. And great for you that you're thinking about this. What I will say about sustainability or initiatives when it comes to making better decisions regarding textiles, producing, and so on, today, those are seen as critical success factors. So perhaps once upon a time, if I go back 15 years ago or even 10 years ago, if I would buy from a brand who was more sustainable, that could be close to the need for achievement. But today, they're mandatory. So I teach critical success factors as well, and those are dynamics. And today, to just compete, brands, especially luxury brands, have to aim to be more sustainable. So not really necessarily fitting into the needs, more fitting into being able to participate in the industry. So, and there's some literature on critical success factors, and it's all industries have to look at that. Like, what are the critical success factors today? And sustainability is one of them for fashion, for being more sustainable.
Perfect. I hope that answered your question, Roxana.
Yeah.
And perfect. Here in the chat, I have a really cool question from Jimena Mejia, and she says, have you ever known a brand that was able to touch all of the 4 needs you mentioned? What do you think, David?
So I think we had a question that was similar before, and I said Hermes has done a good job I've been
Okay.
able to connect with all four. So I don't know if that person didn't hear the answer earlier, but Hermes basically, just in case.
Perfect. Maybe she wrote it and then asked it on camera. So, well, then we ask another question from Valeria. And she says, when starting a brand, what do you think is the most important point to satisfy?
When starting a brand?
Yeah.
That depends on what you want to, what the market, you feel their market needs, number one. So, I mean, people start companies for different reasons. You have those who are more practical and look for gaps in the market. You know, what's missing. And so somebody asked earlier, you know, what should the needs do I think is going to get more popular? I think the need for affiliation. So maybe you say, oh, you know what, this is what's happening right now in Mexico. There's this urban loneliness on the rise. Let me look at that when I'm creating my brand. But you know, they're all good, right? And they all exist. So if you are extremely creative and you have this wild imagination, then maybe you're more about satisfying the need for uniqueness. So there's no right answer there. It's more about the way you operate. And so if you're really coming from a point of view of like a bit more practical, let's say, then yes, maybe study what's happening in the world and shifts in society. But if you're more imaginative and creative, and satisfying the need for uniqueness could be your starting point.
One recommendation for be select in the meeting Encuentro Creative in Polymoda.
I didn't catch all of the questions, Sabina. I'm sorry. Can you repeat?
Do you have some recommendation for make the plus in our curriculum vitae for to be selected in the school?
Oh, how to get into Polymoda, you mean? Like what steps to take?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't, I think maybe Claudia will be able at some point to give you more information on how to go through with the Polymoda applications and so on. But I tell you, it depends on the department, the program you would want to apply for. So if it's for an undergraduate, the requirements are a bit more basic if you want, because we have students coming out of their secondary schools or changing programs. When you're going into the masters, definitely it's different, right? Because it's more specialized. As you saw that student earlier, Anna did a master's in sustainability. So we are looking for students that already have an undergraduate, perhaps some practical experience, some work experience in the industry, and so on. So it really depends on what you want to apply. But at Polymoda, we have phone calls. You can call the advisors. And based on who you are and the resume you provide and so on, they often help you out and guide you. We offer seasonals. So there's a lot of options. So I would start off with the connection. Start speaking to somebody at Polymoda.
Gracias.
I was going to say, in Italian we say prego, but de nada, I'm guessing.
Prego.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you so much, Davide. It was a really interesting session and really enriching. So I hope like all the students enjoyed the session. And thank you to Polymoda as well for planning this session. And then I'm going to switch to Spanish in order to give other messages to the students. Bueno, muchas gracias a todos los que se unieron a Encuentro Creativo. Esperamos que hayan disfrutado tanto como nosotros esta sesión. Bueno, nosotros los incentivamos a que conozcan más acerca de este proyecto. Todavía nos hacen falta 40 y tantas ponencias. Realmente van a ser 2 semanas con mucho contenido. Así que si aún no se han registrado, ingresen por favor al sitio web y estén al pendiente de nuestras redes sociales. Igual, bueno, Polymoda está ofreciendo 2 becas para poder estudiar un verano en Italia. Son 2 becas del 100% y bueno, realmente tiene la oportunidad de conocer muchísimo más acerca de estos programas que ofrece Polymoda, que es una de las escuelas más especializadas en moda en Italia. Les agradecemos a todos por acompañarnos y agradecemos también a la Embajada de Italia en México, que sin su apoyo no sería posible nada de esto. Y también a los patrocinadores de la segunda edición, que son Luxottica, Ferrari, Bulgari, Yamamay, Benetton, Seña, Smeg, Cartel, Alpapar, Natuzzi, Artemide, Amoretti Brothers, Davide Gruppi, Fanel Branca, Ferrero y Orfe México. E igual durante estas 2 semanas de encuentro creativo tendremos contenido de valor que van a ser directamente proporcionado por estas marcas. Entonces les va a dar un insight aún mucho más enriquecedor de lo que es la industria actualmente. Así que bueno, los esperamos en las siguientes sesiones de encuentro creativo. Thank you so much, Davide, again. Y bueno, nos vemos en la siguiente sesión del día. Hasta luego.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
And good luck with everything. Hope to see you in Florence.